Ladies and gentlemen, Andy here. I went from depressed and suicidal to living a life of abundance and joy. If I can do it, you sure as hell can too. Let's get straight into the video. So, an exercise that I like to do that I find quite fun, which might sound a little bit morbid, but it serves a purpose. Whenever I'm stressed about something, I'll kind of sit there and think to myself, okay, what if I was going to die 1 week from now or a couple of days from now? This thing that's stressing me out, this thing that I'm annoyed at or that I'm bothered by, if I literally had 1 week left on this planet, in this existence, would I care about this thing? Or how much would I care about this thing? And I really, really, really go deep on this. So I will literally close my eyes and imagine, yeah, I'm going to die a week from now. How would I be feeling? What would I tell my family and friends? Who would I want to spend my time with? Who would I not want to spend my time with? What would I do in that week? And this issue or this person or this thing that's currently stressing me out, if I had 1 week to live, if I was in that headspace, would I really care about this thing? And if you try an exercise like this yourself, you're probably going to find, like I do, 99% of the stuff that you're stressed about, you don't really give a shit about. You think you do in the moment. You know, you get all worked up, you get all emotional, you get all irrational. You think it's the biggest issue in the entire universe, and you you almost can't fathom how someone else couldn't see that it's the most important thing on the planet. You know, that beautiful ego thought that we all have where we think we're the most important person on the entire planet. All of that kind of fades away if you've only got, or you imagine, you've only got 1 week left to live. You're like, I don't give a shit about this thing. And 99%, like if you try this exercise with everything, 99% of the things that you try it on, or 99% of the stuff that we devote our emotionality and our attention to, you're going to find you don't really care about it. It doesn't really matter, or it doesn't matter to the extent that our emotions or our ego or our self-importance tells us that it matters. And so when I do this exercise, I'm then sort of brought back down to reality, or brought back home to myself, brought back to the things that are actually important to me, and I can let go of the issues that don't matter. And I'm brought back to what I do care about, who I want to be, the people that are important to me, what I want to be spending my time on. So even if you're not currently emotional or stressed about something, or, worrying about an issue, which, let's be honest, 99% of people are currently stressed about something. So, but even if you're not, you can kind of play this exercise of what if I had 1 week left to live, and just think about like what you would do with that time. It's a very good exercise to find out what you actually do care about. Because there's certain things that are immutable to you, as in they don't change. There's things that are just important to you. Like if I had 1 week left to live, would I still care about honesty? Yes. If I had 1 week left to live, would I care about Imogen? Oh my fucking God, yes. Would I care about you guys and girls? Fuck yes. Would I care about my friend Cam? Yes. Would I care about my friend Tim? Yes. Would I care about my family? Yes. Would I care about, I don't know, going to the gym? No, not for a week. Would I care about going outside and being in nature? Yes. And so it's a very good litmus test to figure out the things that are sort of like core principles to you, or like the most important things, the things that are at the top of the priority list for you. Because a lot of the time we don't really know. Like you might be spending your life doing a whole bunch of shit right now that you just don't care about. And eventually you can get yourself to a point where almost everything that you're doing in your life, you really do care about. I've been at that place for, I don't know, the last like 5 or 6 or 7 or so years. I've shaped my entire life, and I've changed my reality to only be doing stuff that I actually deeply care about. And so you can get to that point, but you listening might currently be at a point where a bunch of the stuff you're doing, you just don't really care about. And if you had 1 week to live, you would probably drop a bunch of that. And this doesn't mean that you have to immediately today go and quit your job and do this and do that, although you might. And I've had this sort of awakening and realization through a lot of like psychedelic trips, LSD and all of that, and if you're not familiar with psychedelics and LSD and things like that, it's basically the same exercise that I'm giving all of you here. LSD and psychedelics are very good at getting you to sort of strip away all of the stuff that you don't really care about and ask yourself, what's important to me? That's kind of what some of these drugs do. They get you to just sit there in that moment and say, what do I actually give a shit about? You know what? I don't really give a shit about my job. I'm going to quit tomorrow. I don't really give a shit about this relationship that I'm in. I'm going to change something and improve it, or I'm going to leave. It helps you sort of strip away all the stuff that you've just been mindlessly doing, and it makes you, or it can help wake you up to a higher awareness of like, okay, I don't care about this. I do care about this. I love this. Okay, I don't want this in my life. And it helps you sort of like strip all that away and get back to what you actually want. But short of psychedelics, which by the way, I'm not encouraging anyone to do psychedelics, do your own research, blah, 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 blah. But this exercise of what if I just had 1 week left to live is basically the same thing. It's basically getting you to strip away all of the stuff that you don't really care about. You're kind of just doing because you thought you had to, or you thought you should, or you just, it's a habit, so you've always done it. Maybe you never considered that you don't have to do it. But I did the video series a couple of days ago, or a couple of weeks ago, called I Broke All the Rules. It was a 3-part series. You can find it on my channel. And I talked about all of these sort of rules that I grew up with, or that people told me, you have to do this, you have to have this kind of job, blah, blah, blah. You could never make money from, telling strangers on the internet how to have more sex and more money and all of that kind of stuff. Like all of these rules and expectations that I've had, and I've slowly, systematically removed all of the ones that I don't care about. And it's been a lifelong process, really. But especially over the last 10 years, I've just stripped away all that bullshit and asked myself the fundamental question of, what do I want? It's the first question that I ask any of you. It's the question that I ask all of my coaching clients. I'm like, what do you want? Doesn't matter what you think I, Andy, want for you. By the way, I don't want anything for any of you. I only want whatever you want. But strip away all of the expectations, all of the shoulds, whatever answer you think that I might give you if I'm going to tell you what to do, which I never would do, but lots of people want me to tell them what to do. I'm never going to. But strip all of that away and ask yourself the question of, what do I want? And so this exercise of if I had 1 week left to live is a really good way of getting to the heart of that question. You're basically imagining yourself on your deathbed, and you can think through all of the regrets you think you might have, all of the things you wish you had done, all of the things that you want to do, who you wish you could be, all of that kind of stuff. And that can get straight to the heart of the question of, what do I actually want? And like I said, when the answers come up, I gave you some answers before. Being kind to others is stuff that I would still want to do if I only had 1 week left. Doing content to share with all of you. I'd do a couple of videos before I died, seeing my family, noticing the beauty in everything, and the beauty in nature, and the beauty in human beings and humanity and existence. I would care about that. Sex and intimacy, I'd still care about that. Imogen, I'd care about that. Doing this exercise can help me realize the things that I would still care about if I had 1 week left to live. And so those are the things that I focus a little bit more of my time and attention on, because those are my, I guess you could call them principles, or those are my mission statements. Those are the things that bring me happiness and joy and peace and love and all of that kind of stuff. So I focus more of my attention, more of my time on those. So if you would like to try this exercise yourself, it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's something I do probably every, I don't know, whenever it comes up, but I do it at least once a month. I think I've said this before in content. I say this to some of my coaching clients. I think about death 50 times a day, like constantly. Whenever I'm stressed about something, I'll just say, I'm going to die one day. Do I really care about this? No, I guess not. Okay. So it brings me a tremendous sense of peace, but a lot of people just don't really ever consider the fact that they're going to die. They spend their entire life avoiding that fact, and they haven't made any peace with death. And like 99.9% of you listening right now, if I say to you, how often do you think about death? You'll be like, fuck, man, I don't like to think about death. Maybe when I'm on top of a tall building, I might have a little freak out about death. Or maybe if I'm like crossing the road and there's a car coming towards me going too fast, I might think about death, but like I never think about death. But it's something that's brought me a tremendous amount of peace, is just accepting the fact that yes, I'm going to die. I don't know what comes after that, and making peace with that, and not needing answers, and not needing like a guarantee that I'll live forever. Just being okay with this moment that I have right now. If you can accept death, it's a hell of a lot easier to live your life, because you're not so fucking afraid anymore. I mean, 2020 was a really good example of the entire world, with all the lockdowns, freaking the fuck out about death, and like almost avoiding death like a child would, literally hiding inside, like under the couch, under the blankets, going, no, the boogeyman's going to get me. This COVID thing's going to get me. I want to live forever. And it's like, motherfucker, like, that's not what this is. We were never promised that we would live forever. That wasn't what we signed up for. We were born into this thing knowing we have a limited amount of time. Fucking embrace that. Hiding under your couch from a virus it's just not it, chief. If you want to do that, great. But then demanding that the rest of the world does it with you, fuck that psychosis shit. No, thank you. So we've seen what a lack of embracing the concept of death can bring about. It brings about fear, and ironically, you cease to live when you're too afraid to look at death to accept it. So looking at death has brought me a lot of peace. Like I said, it brings me a lot of perspective during the day. If I'm having a negative thought, or I'm stressed about something, or I'm wishing like, yeah, man, I wish this wasn't like this. I'm like, I'm going to fucking die one day. And then I'm like, oh yeah, why do I care about that? I say this to my coaching clients all the time. We'll sometimes have a big laugh about it where they'll be like stressing about something, getting really worked up, and they'll pour their heart and soul out, and, they're getting really worked up. And then I or someone else in the group will just say, you're going to die one day. And they'll be like, yeah, fuck. Man, why do I care that my boss was mean to me? I'm going to fucking die one day, and then he's going to die, and this problem won't exist anymore. We'll both be fucking dead. So there's a lot of peace that can come from it, but it was something that scared me a lot. So if you're listening and you want to try embracing your fear of death a little bit so you can feel that peace and acceptance of the fact that, yes, you won't be here forever, be gentle with it. Something that I worked on for quite a few years. I read a lot of books about it. Loving What Is a really good book. Letting Go. Another book, Letting Go of Nothing. Another book, Love is Letting Go of Fear. There's a lot of religious books, regardless of if you're religious or not. I'm not religious, but there's a lot of like ancient Christian mysticism and stuff like that that's actually like really good on these topics. Maybe something like The Dark Night of the Soul, any of Mother Teresa's books. Like all of these sort of books help you embrace the concept of death and the fact that like, yes, you're going to die. So there's all different ways of embracing it. But if you do decide to do this, be gentle with it. Death is a scary thing, death is a scary thing to a lot of people, and it might be to you. So you don't have to force this stuff. And you don't have to embrace your fear of death at all if you don't want to. Okay, let's read some comments. So I said this before, but I want to read out some comments at the end of most of the videos, just so I can connect with a lot of you a little bit more. So Ned Flanders 472, who's a little celebrity on the channel lately. I've been reading out a ton of your comments, man. Says, thank you so much for taking the time to answer my comment. You were actually right by pointing out that I've been somewhat judgmental. That's okay. I'm judgmental a lot too. It reminds me that I've made several resolutions in the past to work on being less judgmental, and it's definitely something it's something I definitely need to put on my agenda if I want to be able to connect more with other people. So, yeah, the way that I would say to do this is just, if you want to, which it sounds like this is something that's important to you or something that you want to do, rather than thinking it like, I've got to be less judgmental, or I've got to either be non-judgmental, instead of looking at it like you're either judgmental or you're non-judgmental, you can kind of just look at it like a skill that you're slowly leveling up. Like it's a video game, right? You're like, what if I practice being a tiny little bit more open every day? Like just 1% more open each week. Like it's a skill that I just practice. It's a habit that I practice. And openness, which is what being less judgmental is. It's not being less judgmental, it's being open. Like there's an actual thing that you practice and build into a habit. We call that openness. We also call it willingness. We call it acceptance, like any of these words. Just being open. And so what that might look like is, I don't know, you might... So here's an example. I used to be very, very judgmental with overweight people. I would tell all these stories of like, they're abusing their body, they're wasting their life, they don't care about health, they don't want to look good, like all of these stories, right? And to practice being more open, what I would do is I would start talking to people that were overweight. I would start, I've talked about this before, if I would see an overweight person and all the judgmental thoughts would be in my head, I would kind of just like follow them around, and not for like hours, like stalking them or some shit, but I would just follow them for the next 5 minutes and watch what they do. And as I was watching them, I would try and come up with like 5 reasons why they're more enlightened than me, or why they're full of love, or why they're a wonderful human being. And I would try and look for evidence, so like they might be an overweight mother, and my initial judgmental thought used to be, oh, she's like overweight and that's not good for her kids. She's setting a bad example for her kids, judgmental shit, right? And I would then look for 5 reasons why she's actually a fantastic, loving, beautiful mother. And I would listen to the way she talked to her kid, and I'd be like, wow, that's actually very loving. And I would look at the way she would like hold her kid's hand as they cross the road, and I'd be like, wow, that's very loving. She clearly loves her kid. And so I was basically trying to break down some of these like judgmental thoughts that I was having and try and look for an alternate story to tell. Like, can I tell the story that she's actually a wonderful mother? Can I tell the story that overweight people actually do love their bodies? They just love food, or they eat for self-medication, or a variety of reasons that I can't possibly know without fucking talking to the human being instead of just assuming. And so I would kind of give some counter evidence to my judgmental thoughts. And so you can kind of practice the same stuff. Anytime you have a judgmental thought about someone, you can just practice being more open, or practice telling a kinder story about them. Practice telling a story that flatters them rather than the judgmental thought that you have. And you can do the same thing with yourself, because if we're judgmental of others, it's always because we're projecting. So we're incredibly judgmental of ourselves, and then we start being judgmental of other people. But without that judgment of yourself, you just won't be judgmental of other people. And so you can start cleaning up some of the judgment that you have with yourself. In other words, you can start being more open and kind to yourself. And so anytime you have a judgmental thought about yourself, I don't know if you're doing it here. You might be. Like, you would have to answer the question for yourself. I don't know. But is it possible that you're maybe judging yourself for being judgmental? And again, I don't know. It's hard to tell from your comment, but sometimes we judge ourselves for being judgmental. We judge ourselves for being judging. So you can kind of let that go a little bit and be like, well, I'm just a human being and I have an ego, and a big part of that is judgment, and judgment actually serves a purpose. Out in nature, I need to, for survival, quickly judge whether or not that lion is going to eat me or it's safe. I literally need to judge, do I think that's safe or dangerous? I need to judge whether or not that berry bush is safe or it's poisonous. I need to judge whether or not that bird is toxic and birds aren't toxic, are they? That frog is toxic or safe. I need to judge whether or not the person in my tribe is trustworthy or not trustworthy. Like, judgment is there for survival. And so if I'm being judgmental, well, that's okay. That's just a survival habit. Now, I don't live in caveman days anymore. It isn't like a fucking desperate fight for survival. So maybe I can slowly start to let go of some of that judgment and start practicing openness a little bit, and start trusting the universe and trust that everything is okay and it will all be okay. I can trust other people. I can let go of some of that stuff. But the judgment serves a purpose. It's there for a reason. And so when you start going through like understanding why you're judgmental, that, funnily enough, lets go of a lot of the judgment. So then if you're judging someone else, let's say you see a parent screaming at their kid in public, and you have that judgmental thought, because you now understand why you're judgmental. You're like, oh, well, I need to be judgmental. Or at least in caveman days, I needed to be judgmental because I need to know if this parent that's screaming at their kid is going to be a threat to me. So yeah, it makes sense that I would judge them immediately. Okay, cool. Like, just understanding why you're being judgmental can help let go of a lot of the judgment, funnily enough, because now you understand it. Buddhists have this saying where they say, all suffering is from ignorance. And by ignorance, they just mean not understanding something. Byron Katie, one of my favorite authors, has a very similar quote where she says, all suffering comes from confusion, like a lack of understanding. And so when you understand why you're being judgmental, like what purpose it serves, it helps alleviate a lot of that suffering and a lot of that like stress that can come from judgment. So yeah, it's something that can help a little bit. And this is a process, like it took me a long time to be a lot less judgmental, and I'm still judgmental sometimes, and that's okay. That's part of being human, progress, not perfection. Ned goes on to say, zero friends and depressed sounds familiar to me. Yeah, for a lot of people in self-improvement. Like, understand that a lot of people come to self-improvement because they're very unhappy with their life. Like, if your life is going great and you're on track for the things that you want, you're probably not seeking out self-improvement channels. Like, you probably just don't need them. You might go and look up some motivation or follow someone on Instagram who posts like, seize the day, carpe diem, like, hey, beautiful people, let's go out and crush our goals. Like, you might follow someone for that. You might even follow my content for that. I do a lot of like pushing and motivating and all of that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, most people who seek out self-improvements because you're trying to fix a problem, like you're unhappy and you want a solution. So yeah, it's a very common thing. You go on to say, that's why your content gives me so much hope, because you show that there is a way to break free from it. Yeah, there absolutely is, man. Like, of course there is. Like, that's the start of every one of my podcasts, right? I went from depressed and suicidal to living a life of abundance and joy. If I can do it, you sure as hell can too. That last little bit I put in there intentionally, it was the motto of my website when I first started my website. But I put it in there intentionally to show you, like, yeah, take from my example, take a page from my book. And that's how a lot of us learn, right? Like, I learned from all the other people who had done the things that I wanted to do. And they were basically putting out the same message of like, hey, I did this, so here's how you can do the same thing. So yeah, isn't it wonderful that we have examples of other people that have done the thing that we want? And we can kind of just copy and learn from them. And you might have to change little bits and pieces. And, you're your own person, so you're not going to copy me exactly, obviously. But we can kind of take a big page out of most people's books and learn from them. I think that's amazing. I think it's crazy that we live in the day of the internet. Like, we have access to infinite knowledge. We literally have access to the Library of Babylon. And if you don't know what that is, I misspoke. It's the Library of Babel. And it's basically like this short story that some guy wrote in like the 1900s, talking about like it's a thought experiment, I guess, and also a story of like, imagine if there was a library that had literally every book that had ever been written ever and could ever be written. And to go a little further with this, what it actually is, it's basically, imagine we had an infinite library that had every single key or character combination that could ever be written. Like, imagine you're just like hitting random keys on a keyboard. And if we had like every possible permutation of every way that we could ever put letters and numbers and shit together, within that, we would accidentally have all of the books ever written. Maybe I'm not fully explaining what I mean, but it's similar to that thing, the saying that people say of, if we had infinite monkeys typing on infinite typewriters for infinite amount of time, and they were just like banging random keys, you would eventually get one of them to accidentally write Shakespeare. And so that's kind of what the Library of Babel is. It's a thought experiment or a book of like, what if we just like randomly hit keys forever, infinitely, and within that, there would be all of the books ever written, everything, like your name would be in there. Randomly, someone would have accidentally typed your name. And so I kind of like that idea. But we basically have access to that now. Like today, we have like every concept, and not every concept, but it feels like every concept, every problem that you could ever have. Someone has done a YouTube video on it. Someone's written a book about it. So it's fucking crazy that we live in the time of that. And technically, someone did actually code the Library of Babel. So if you just Google Library of Babel, the very first one, someone with like a fucking algorithm, I don't understand how. There's a fucking explanation on here. But look, someone has made the Library of Babel. So you can go to this website. It's just libraryofbabel.info. And it has every key combination that could ever freaking be smashed on a keyboard. And within that, people have like found books and stuff in there. So you can go through this and click on this shit yourself and have a look. You can type in stuff as well. You can say like, show me in the Library of Babel where my name shows up. So you can search. Look, there's literally a search function. I could search for like, kill your inner loser is the best guy in the universe. And then you can search and it will show you like where in this random fucking key combination. There you go. Like, look, here's an exact match. Here's more matches. Yeah, isn't that kind of fucking cool? And it shows you like where on the page. Yeah, I find this stuff like incredibly fascinating. Anyway, the point that I'm making, random side tangent, but we live in the access or in the day of like the internet and the Library of Babel, and everything that you could ever want, every problem that you could ever want to solve, someone has done a video on it, or someone has overcome the problem that you've overcome. I talked about this in my Play to Win video course. I had an entire chapter where I said, when you're having like limiting beliefs and fears and doubts and all of that, just go on the internet and freaking Google. Like, Google the problem that you're having or the thing that you're stressed about. And 99.999% of the time, somebody else has felt this same way that you're feeling or had this same problem, and they've overcome it and they've solved it. So if they did it, you can too. You can just learn from them. So I find it amazing that we live in the day of the internet where we can just access this incredible library of all this freaking information. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I will wrap it up there. Hope this was helpful. I will run the outro of my coaching program. If you're interested in that, there's links down below. As always, go out there and crush those goals. What a nice, juicy shot of motivation when it comes to making money. Check out what these absolute legends have done in our coaching program. Laz more than doubled his monthly income from $25,000 a month to $45K a month. Dimitri started his own business and earned his first $500 within his first 2 months. Ravi followed in my footsteps and created his own kick-ass coaching business, motivating other people and changing the world. Joe started his own successful photography and dating business, quitting his job and earning tons of money, all while helping guys get the dating life they've always dreamed of. None of these people are special. Come and join our coaching program and have us save you years of figuring out the business world yourself. You deserve to have money. You deserve to have a big, sexy, fat bank account, and we'd love to help you make that happen. Click the link in the description below to the coaching program. We can't wait to see you there.